Welcome back to this series of videos where I'm going to be covering different types of flashcards and how to construct them effectively. In the last video, I covered case study based flashcards, and in this video, I'm going to be doing ones that are focused on keywords and their definitions. Now, in my opinion, these are sometimes the most popular ones with students because, especially at GCSE and A-level, there are a lot of key terms that you're learning about. At A-level, this is both in terms of physical and human geography, and at GCSE, it's for the whole course. So if we start by looking at this example here, this example covers a key term from the challenge of natural hazards, constructive plate boundary. And on side A of the flashcard, what you want to do is in large bold letters, write out the key term. Now, what I will say is that although these videos are geared towards geography, that you can use this in other subjects. For example, this could be replaced by a key event in history, or a key quotation in English literature, or a key term in science, for example. And again, as with the last video, we're going here with the top left, you're writing the topic name, and if you're in Key Stage 4 or Key Stage 5, where it is in the specification. So that's side A done. Now, for some examples of other key terms which you could have used on side A, you can refer to the description where I'll link a collection which I've made of all the key terms in GCSE geography, and you can pick any of them. And I've actually written down the definitions there too. I made that for other teachers to be able to use, but you as students can use them too. If we just go on the specification now, so this is just for GCSE, although for A-level, obviously, there are lots of key terms there too. You could be going through this section here on tectonic hazards. You could do one on primary effects, another one on secondary effects. You see the one that we're looking at currently is on constructive plate margins. You could do one on what does monitoring mean, what does prediction mean, what does protection mean. I think you can't really overdo this. If you had a whole pile and you had as many as 50, 60 key terms, or perhaps even more, it wouldn't be an issue. I'd be more worried about not knowing a certain key term and its definition come exam time. What you could do if you wanted to save space is, if you look over here in this flashcard, where you could split it down the middle. You could have constructive plate boundary on the one side and destructive plate boundary on the other. And then when you flip it over to side B, which we'll cover now, you could also imitate that same sort of slicing in half. So when we get onto side B, what I find really helpful is, especially for a key term like this, but also really any other key term, to have a diagram or a symbol down the middle. Now, in my previous video, I mentioned the concept of dual coding and how I think it's quite a helpful tool to use as a student to help you remember something. Now, for some key terms, like constructive plate margin, it's a lot more useful than it might be for others. I think you would be doing yourself a disservice if you didn't include a diagram of what a constructive plate boundary might look like if you want to know what it is. So that goes in the middle, as big or small as you want it. Just underneath it, in a very, very central location, you would do the definition of the key term. Now, this is the most important bit of the flashcard. You made the flashcard for this purpose in the first place. So that needs to be there. It needs to be a clear definition using as few words as possible so that it's easy to remember. Okay, and then on the other side of the diagram, or if you don't have a diagram, just anywhere on side B, you have what I call additional information, which may help you recall the term or aid in adding detail in an exam. So here, for constructive plate margin on the right-hand side, I've given an example of a plate margin that found in Iceland, where the North American and the Eurasian plates are moving away from each other. And then on the left-hand side, I've written about what hazards you find at a constructive plate boundary. So both volcanoes and earthquakes are covered there. Now, that would be helpful to me in two ways. One, because it would help me remember what constructive was in the first place. So if I only remembered the North American and Eurasian plates, then I'd remember the Mid-Atlantic Ridge in Iceland. I'd remember studying that in lesson, and then I remember, oh, okay, I now remember that constructive plate margin means pulling apart. And then also, the other purpose which this serves is that actually you get to use it in an exam setting as an example. Okay, so let's go through the main features one more time. We'll start off with side A. Side A on the top left has the link to the specification or the topic and the key term nice and big. Then on side B, we've got a diagram or a symbol to help you remember or to recall the meaning of the key term. Just underneath that, we've got the actual definition of the key term. And then either side of the diagram, if you choose to have a diagram, we have additional information that may help you recall the term or aid in adding detail in an exam. Let me just go back to the specification and I'll show you again where this could apply in different parts of the specification. So that was for tectonic hazards, as you saw. Here we are on climate change. You may choose to do one on deforestation. You may choose to do one on carbon capture, or just the word adaptation, or what mitigation means. Then if we go over to the human geography side of it, you may do a flashcard on traffic congestion or urban planning, or perhaps what social and economic opportunities actually means. And that would give you some room to give a few examples. If we go over to changing economic world, you may want to cover, well, what does deindustrialization mean? A very, very important one that came up in last year's exam. What is a post-industrial economy? So you get the idea. There is no shortage of key terms in the GCSE geography specification, and I think that going through each and every one of them and making a flashcard or half a flashcard or a smaller size flashcard if you want to save space and resources is really, really useful. So hopefully you found the second video in this series helpful. It's been covering keyword focused flashcards. In the next video, I'll go on to cover diagram centered flashcards. See you there.